Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Our guest right now, he was at Chabad of Porway just a week ago. He is somebody who is a life coach, and he's involved in helping Baalei Teshuvos. He himself is a returning to Judaism. Rabbi Aharon Tzvi Altman, thank you for joining us. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Thank you, Zev.
What a difference a week makes. Last week on Shabbos, the last day of Passover, you were leading services at Chabad of Porway, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I took more of an initiative. Really, starting Friday night with Shabbos, I made sure to go to shul and to add more to the atmosphere there and getting people singing and dancing. And after the services Friday night, I actually went up to the rabbi's son, Shui, and I didn't really ask. I just basically told him that I want to lead the services tomorrow, and he was very open to the idea. And I just felt that I really needed to participate. I had received a letter from the Rebbe that we had written before, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, for just a blessing we had written. And part of the letter.
How does that work? You send it to the where the Rebbe is buried. How does it work by writing a letter to the Rebbe?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm new to the idea as well. Basically, this time through, my wife and I had actually written out a letter about our travel plans with the idea to go to Poway, and we put it in one of the books of the Rebbe's letters. And just into a random book that we had, into a random page, we opened it up, and obviously everything's a shakapatus. And the letter on the right was speaking about visiting or traveling, and in particular traveling, in this case, to Kfar Chabad, and to give strength to the community there. And so we took that at the time as a message to not just go to Poway to receive, but to also give back and to add something. And so fast forward to Aharon Shel Pesach, I just felt this surge of energy and, a desire, really a rutzon to want to participate. And so I led the services that morning. I was on the bima, the platform in the middle of the room, for about an hour and 10 minutes. And, I tried to make sure that the atmosphere was festive and joyous. And from the feedback I received, people very much felt that. And I just feel like I have a certain merit, I guess. I very much appreciate the fact that I had the zchut to be the one to lead the prayers for the last time for Lori Kay to hear Alei Shalom, and as a kohen to also say the Birkat Kohanim for her. And I look back and I'm just grateful that I was able to help in the little way that I did.
Now you were there with your family, right? You have a connection to Poway in California.
That's correct. My father recently moved out there for a company, Learning Services, and we decided to visit him. And my mother came in, my uncle came in for Yom Tov. It was our first time making Yom Tov there, and we had an incredible week. It was a great experience to be there, and we don't want to diminish that. The experiences that we had all of Yom Tov and traveling around Chol Moed, and the community was so warm, including Lori. Coming and welcoming herself to us. And
she's a very special lady from what I heard. I only read about her, but she seems like her deeds were really very, very special, what she did. So here you are 1 week ago. You were on Shabbat. You were on the last day of Passover. You finished, you were prayed, you led the services. They had the reading of the Torah. And what happened around Chamishi time where something happened, perhaps in your words. Let's go back to Chamishi on the last day of Pesach.
Sure. So my uncle had just received the Kohen Aliyah, so he was on the bima a couple of minutes before. He had come back to his seat, and my father was sitting at the edge of his seat, the last seat on the row. I was standing next to him, and my uncle was next to my father. And I had actually just closed the back emergency door to my left of the synagogue because there was a little bit of noise coming out from that area with the road there and the cars. So the shul was completely a lot more silent at that point because of the reading. And the first blast was heard, and there were a couple seconds between that and then the rest of the shots that were fired.
Did you know what was happening? Did you know that it was shots? Is that the first thing that went through your mind and everybody else's mind at the Chabad of Poway?
I think everyone was trying to process it because it was such a loud sound. No one could really see what was going on because it was in the room connected to the synagogue, but looking back after we went in to see why we couldn't see, there was the windows that would have looked into that area were being blocked by the rack holding all the talasim. So we couldn't see anyone, we couldn't see anything, but we heard, and your mind is racing. You have milliseconds. You're thinking of all these possibilities. Maybe a table fell. I thought that my father thought maybe it was something from the kitchen. I thought originally my first thought was maybe this was a prank by a child throwing a firecracker or something, but very quickly, your mind really my mind really came to the conclusion that this is like, just go. This is an attack, and you just you don't think, and you just go. So I quickly got down and made my way out to my right where there was another emergency exit door. Thank God that was open. And I made it out pretty smoothly, I believe. I don't remember exactly why, but I did lose a button on my jacket, on my kapata, as well as my cuffling broke on my right side. So I'm not exactly sure what happened at that point. I lost my yarmulke, I lost my talis, they all flew off, and I ran a few steps, and then I actually stopped, and I turned back because I wanted to check on my father and my uncle, because I realized they were still in the synagogue. And when I turned back to go back into the synagogue, I saw 5 or 6 men falling over themselves in panic, rushing out, and it was just chaos. So I turned back the other way, and I looked to the left around the bend, because that's where the entrance of the synagogue was, to make sure that the shooter wasn't there. You also don't know how many shooters there are, right? You have no idea what's happening. And there was no one there. I didn't see a shooter, so I continued running. I flipped myself over a fence. I looked down the road there where all the cars were parked, and I didn't see the shooter there either, so I continued running across the street, and I hid in the bushes right across the street. And I was obviously very much on edge, because I don't know if the shooter is going to come after me. I don't know if he's going to hide in the bushes themselves. I don't know what's going on. I heard shots. I heard screaming. And obviously I'm thinking about my father. I'm thinking about my uncle. I'm thinking about everyone else in the synagogue, what's going on. And I was just waiting to hear the sirens of the police coming. And unfortunately, it took a while for them to come.
How long would you say it took before they came, from the time that the first shots rang out to emergency relief came to the synagogue?
It's a good question. I mean, it's hard. It may feel longer than it was, but it felt like it was 10 minutes. And the paramedics even came after that. And actually, when the police arrived, so when I was in the bushes, I heard all the commotion and stuff, and then I actually heard the vehicle speed away, or I heard a vehicle speed away.
Was that the vehicle with the shooter? Is that what you believe?
Yeah, it was his car. It was his vehicle. And so I then kind of peeked my head up to see what's going on. And I saw the Rabbi Goldstein, outside. He was screaming, "Where are they? Where are they?" Which I assume was the police. And he had his hand bloody in his tallis. And I came out, and I noticed that the police cars were actually on the main road, but not actually on the road that connects to the synagogue's entrance, and they didn't know where to go. They were circling around, so I actually ran out to the road and waved them over. So by the time they came, and then by the time the paramedics, and that wasn't even the paramedics came afterwards. So, it was obviously a lot of things going on, and I was told by my father, who was trying to call 911, that the line was busy at a time when they were calling 911, so there were definitely some delays there, unfortunately, but, I think everything worked out as it did.
Now, where were your father and uncle at this point? And you said you were by yourself. Would they stay in the shul? Did they run out? Where did they end up going?
So they both had their own experiences. My father, who's actually listening on the line, I believe now. Hi, Dad. I love you. And my mother, I love you too. And my father basically made his way out and followed me, or at least my path. He saw me hop over the fence. He himself also hopped over the fence, which he doesn't really know how he was able to do that. And when he hopped over the fence, he actually was on the road and he looked to his left, and he saw the Border Patrol man, Jonathan, shooting at the driver, shooting at the shooter who's in his car. And my father froze to kind of see what's going to happen, because he saw that we were on the offensive here. We were fighting back. And the shooter actually made a U-turn. The way he parked in a way that he would have to make a U-turn in front of everyone outside. So the Border Patrol Jonathan saw the license plate, and my father was on the sidewalk, and he watched as the driver drove past him. Obviously, he was trying to prepare himself that if the driver would try to run him over, that he would have to run away or something. But my father was able actually to get the last 3 digits of the license plate, which Jonathan had mixed up. And so they put the right numbers together so that when the law enforcement arrived, that was the first thing they went and just started saying to them. And my father was thankfully okay from that angle. My uncle had a different route. He hit the ground. He's a little bit older than us, or at least older than my father. He's about 72. So he hit the ground. And when when the shooting stopped, the moment he made his way out following these Israelis who were in the back, through the back exit door, which I had originally closed, as I said, that door was eventually opened, and people had fled the back route. And he said he remembered that one of the Israelis was screaming, "Yeladim, Yeladim," to gather all the children and to get them to run away. And they all went back the back route, down the stairs, over to the home of Rabbi Mendy Goldstein, who is the son of Rabbi Yisrael, whose home is connected to the back of the synagogue. And he went down there, and he was safe. And then he saw the rabbi come down. And then when he saw the rabbi go back into the synagogue area, my uncle followed. And without realizing that Rabbi Goldstein had touched the fence, and so when he himself touched the fence, he had all of this blood on his hands, actually onto his shoes as well, from the rabbi. And he went inside, and he saw Lori there, obviously in a very bad state. He said that he told us right away that when he saw us that she does not look good at all, and he's obviously having to cope with those images. And so after the police came, us 3 reunited. We obviously gave each other a hug. I came back into the synagogue. I kind of picked up some of the talesim that were on the ground and the sidurim and kind of trying to make sense of it. And in the foyer area, the room where he had come in and shot Lori, there was obviously a lot more going on. And I just kind of tried to stay away from that for the time being. And when the police came in, they made us all evacuate, and we all had to walk past Lori. And it was a very tough sight to see. And outside, Rabbi Goldstein Lori was then taken out on a stretcher once the paramedics arrived, and that was a very heart-wrenching scene to see her daughter, Hannah, and Hashem should give her a lot of comfort and strength, mamash. She really saw a lot, and more than anyone should ever have to see, with her mother and her father, who had performed CPR on her mother without realizing it was his wife at the time. And when he did realize, he fainted. So she came out actually and saw her mother and her father in such a state, and it's horrible to imagine what she had to go through. But when they were all outside, she was first going to go in the ambulance, but it was very difficult for her, and she just couldn't keep her emotions, obviously, understandably, in check. And she was just screaming, "It's my mom! It's my mom!" And her father came and hugged her and said, "I know." And that was just, it was heart-wrenching to see that happening to our brothers and sisters, right in front of our eyes. And Rabbi Goldstein then decided to speak right then and there. He had started to already get bandaged up or just have his fingers wrapped. And he spoke from the heart. He really shared what he was feeling. There were obviously a lot of things happening, so I try to remember what he said. He definitely brought up the Holocaust, and that for years we've been hunted down like animals, and that it's a bitter gullus, a bitter exile, and we're not gonna bow down to this evil. And Lori just spoken to me about saying Yizkor, and we're going to say Yizkor today, and we're not going to stop. And Am Yisrael Chai. And when he got onto the stretcher, he was singing, "We want Mashiach now." And I was just saying, wow, I was thinking in my mind, only a Lubavitcher would not lose sight of the fact that we have to give strength to one another to bring Mashiach. And he was put into the ambulance and taken away, and we then went for questioning. We went to the church nearby, into one of their banquet rooms, and the community there was very warm and hospitable to us. They didn't realize that it was Passover because they were offering us bread, but they were very hospitable, and then we eventually made it back. Eventually, once there was enough time that we could actually then all be escorted to Rabbi Mendy's house, where we ate something. This is about 2:00 now, and we ate something, we drank something, and then we had to continue from Chamishi, if you believe it or not.
You picked up the Torah reading, right? And where was the services? It was outside in the street? Where was it?
No, it was in the rabbi's son's house. They basically had run in to the shul once it was secure by police and taken the Sifrei Torah out.
Oh, so the police had let them go into the crime scene and take the Torahs out?
Yeah, they let them in very early. This was like very before they really cornered it off. But yeah, they were able to get, I don't know exactly how they got permission, but they went in, they got it, so they brought it to the house, and we picked up from Chamishi, and we did the Haftorah. We all did Haggaimel then, the whole shul, which you can imagine was very surreal. We all had been informed about Lori not making it a little bit before. Someone had phoned from the hospital, so the mood was obviously very somber, and so we all made Haggaimel then, and that was definitely surreal. And we Haftorah, Yizkor, which was also very hard, as it was also keeping in mind Lori now, and we did Musaf and Birtas Kohanim, and then the next round of interviews after that came, because the FBI had shown up now with the sheriff's department, because it was a homicide, so they had even more questions for us. And
so everybody was questioned by the FBI and by the local authorities?
Yeah. FBI and the sheriff's office were the ones who took over. It was the sheriff's office. So we davened mincha then, and then we decided to walk home. My father, my uncle, and myself. It was about 6 p.m. and I had thankfully I found my kippah, and I found somehow my tallis did make its way to the rabbi's son's house, so I had that and I wore it proudly, and we started walking home. The officers offered to escort us, so we said sure. We made sure that they said that there wasn't any threat that they knew of, and that we could walk home. And so we walked home, being in honor to keep honoring Shabbos, which was an important thing for us. There is no Erev there in Poway, and so my wife and baby were not in the synagogue, as well as a lot of the other women who have young children because of that. And actually that entranceway where the shooter entered, just a little bit under 24 hours before, my wife and I were sitting in that exact hall with other mothers and children, because that was the place that you arrived to and kind of changed your shoes, and it was connected to the synagogue, so if the baby was crying, you could go outside with him or her. And it was definitely, hard to think about if this would have happened 24 hours before, with all of us being in that room, and or just even if they were in the synagogue, how I would have reacted perhaps differently. And so, we really feel, my wife and I, that Shabbos saved us, and keeping Shabbos saved us. And so when we walked back, for me it was never, once I knew my life was okay, that I was going to walk back proud with my head up, and we were escorted, and along the way we had a lot of vehicles stopping along the roads and the path to roll down their window and offer their condolences and, blessings for peace. Most of them, I believe most of them were non-Jews. And we made it back home, and obviously it was a big relief to just be home with our loved ones and try to just, enjoy the last little part of Yom Tov for whatever we could, because, we obviously been through what we went through, and just, we were grateful.
It's bone chilling. I'm listening to you. It's bone chilling just to hear what was a Shabbos supposed to be a festive, it's Pesach supposed to be a festive time, and marred by a shooter who was out to kill as many Jews as possible. It's a miracle that his gun jammed, but unfortunately, from what I understand, Lori Kay was a wonderful, special woman who was the one that's killed. How many people were wounded, aside from the rabbi, from Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein?
Besides the rabbi, I believe there were 2 others who were wounded.
Do you know who they are? They were regulars at
there were 2 Israelis.
One of them who ran after the shooter. Okay.
Who ran out? No, Almon was an Israeli who ran in to save the children, and he ran in to save his niece, Noya, who was hit with shrapnel. So Almon was hit, I think, in the leg, and trying to save his niece, which he did. And as they were fleeing, she was also hit with, I think, in her back and a little bit on her face with shrapnel. And he had a lot of courage, to be able to do that, as well as Oscar, who was the first one to go after the shooter. Oscar being a former military man, he was able to recognize when the gun jammed and saw that he had an opportunity to fight back, and so he then charged him, screaming at the top of his lungs, which that was the screaming that we heard. It was actually him screaming at the shooter, not the shooter screaming at us. And he threw a chair at him, and he was really trying to get him away from the premises, which he did succeed in doing. And actually, Oscar came up to me after this whole thing, and he looked me in the eyes, and he shook my hand, and he said that my prayers gave him a lot of strength. And I was very glad to hear that I could have helped in some way, and I really feel like, that was part of my role, I guess, in this, was just to put everyone in a certain state of joy and celebration, to be in a positive state in their mind, obviously not knowing what was about to happen. And it was a real quick, you see how you go from one
to the other. Did you daven Musaf as well? Did you daven Musaf as well for the honor?
I didn't at that point. I did not, and as a clan, I'm a clan, so I didn't.
Because you had a duchen
as well, and I had a duchen. So,
and who davened Musaf?
It was the rabbi's son-in-law, I think. His recent son-in-law, who just married his daughter. He davened in the house.
We're speaking with a survivor, and we're getting an eyewitness account of what happened 1 week ago in Poway, at the Chabad of Poway, where you had one person killed and a couple of wounded. And when we come back, we continue our conversation with Rabbi Aharon Tzvi Altman. He was at the Chabad of Poway. He lives in Brooklyn, New York, and he was there with some members of his family. And when we come back, we take some of your phone calls.
TCN, Talkline Communications Network Radio, America's #1 Jewish program.
And we are looking at the tragedy. It could have been worse. Thank God it wasn't. But we're looking at what happened in the Chabad of Poway 1 week ago on Shabbos. And our guest is a survivor giving an eyewitness testimony. Rabbi Aharon Tzvi Altman is a survivor, as I mentioned before. We'll take some of your emails, zevbrenner@gmail.com. Here's an email question for you. Can you tell us what the nature of the security was at the Chabad Shul?
Sure. The facility is a very large facility. It's a very well-done facility. There were security cameras. During the week, the doors are locked. You cannot enter unless you have a pad, a code for the pad to get in. I think they actually just received a grant, as far as I had heard. I can't confirm that. But also for the gate, they're allowed to entrance in the back. There was a pad to get through. So on Shabbos or on Yom Tov...
Oh, hold on. Yeah, go ahead, Rabbi. Yes.
On Shabbos or on Yom Tov, those doors, the door was open, one door was open, in order for people to come in and out. And there was no security guard present. And Jonathan, who was the border agent who was there, he had in the past, he has worked there as a security guard, as far as I was told.
Did he carry a weapon, as far as you know?
As far as I know, he did not carry a weapon that day.
At other times, did he carry a weapon?
Yes, at other times he would carry a weapon, as far as I'm aware, when he was doing security. But when he came on that day, he came for prayer.
As a prayer, so because he came for prayer, he didn't carry a weapon with him.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Fascinating. Had he carried a weapon, I'm not sure if things would have been maybe it would have been differently. Hard to say, right?
It may have been differently if he would have had one, because he probably could have shot back quicker. He only started shooting back once he was able to obtain a gun, and and to shoot, after he already had left the building. So perhaps if he had the gun on him, he would have been able to return fire right away.
He shot at the shooter?
Yeah, he was able to shoot at the shooter after he had left the building and entered his vehicle.
Oh, he had a gun in his vehicle?
No, I think he received the gun from someone else in the community who had a gun in the synagogue.
Oh, so there was a gun in the synagogue that he was able to access that. So there was a weapon there in case of emergency.
Yes.
So he got the gun and he shot at the shooter, but it was already after he was fleeing. He was already gone from the scene.
Yeah, I think it was. But I think my understanding was once the gun jammed, and the shooter already seen some of the damage that he already inflicted, and also we have to keep in mind he was a 19-year-old kid. So I don't think he expected that his gun would jam because he brought 60 rounds. And I think also the way that he parked, I don't think he maybe had planned that he'd be fleeing the scene and that he would have to require himself to make a U-turn. But I can't speak for him, obviously. But it was only after the gun jammed, Oscar chased them out, that he then ran after both of them. He told Oscar to get out of the way because he was going to start shooting, and he did start shooting the vehicle. He hit the vehicle, but he did not hit the shooter.
And did you see John Ernest, the shooter?
I personally did not.
Let's go to Jeff in Brooklyn. Jeff from Brooklyn, your question for our guest. Go ahead, Jeff from Brooklyn.
Well, it's not a question. I'd like to make a statement. The Friediger Rav, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, carried a gun on him at all times because actually it was the Jews, the Yefsekzi of the NKVD, of the KGB, the Jewish people were trying to assassinate him. He always carried a gun with him and used to go and target shoot. They said he always had a perfect shot. And I would suggest we learn from the Friediger Rav, and all of us should carry pistols when we go to shul as well.
You say, I never heard that the previous Rebbe, he had a gun on him? I never heard that.
Yes, 100%.
Where did you get this information from?
The Hasidic Der. It's a magazine put out by Lubavitch.
Rabbi Altman, have you heard about that?
I've heard some ideas of that before, yes.
All right, interesting. I learned something tonight. Jeff, thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you. So here you are in the synagogue. You didn't see John Ernest, the shooter, but there's pandemonium breaking out. Now, the people, from what I read, and perhaps you can tell us, there seemed to have been some training, as far as you know. Was there training that if there was a terrorist incident, how people should act? Was that part of what was going on at Chabad of Poway?
It's a good question. I don't know if how much that played a role. I think for Rabbi Goldstein it did. He mentions that it did. I don't know for the congregants how much that did play a role. I think most people were just reacting without thinking. You're just naturally reacting for fleeing for your life. And it was only the two courageous men of Oscar and Jonathan who actually decided to run towards the shooter instead of running away from the shooter. So, I'm grateful that they were there, and they took they made the decision to go after him.
I'm getting a WhatsApp from one of our listeners, one of the Holy Chabad rabbis says that he's not sure if it's true that the Friediger Rebbe had a gun, but he was a good shot. So it was just a piece of historical accuracy that we're trying to ascertain. So thank you, Rabbi Alevsky, for letting us know about that. So tell us about the role of Rabbi Goldstein. You said he held himself under fire. How he, from what I understood, he held himself with tremendous grace and was able to continue the davening. Were people able to focus, considering what just happened? You said you picked up at Chamisha, they davened Musaf, they had Duchening. Were people able to focus on the prayers? I'm sure their thoughts must have been 100 miles elsewhere because of what happened, the tragedy.
Right. Well, there was a few other Goldstein. Rabbi Goldstein Senior, Yisrael Goldstein, who was hit. Right, he went to the hospital. So I actually saw his kapata that he wore that day with bullet holes through his sleeve. And obviously a lot of blood on the actual jacket. So that was chilling to see. I remember him actually saying when he was speaking to the group, as I mentioned earlier, he showed his garment and he said, "This is a miracle." I remember him pointing this out in front of everyone, that look at this miracle already, that, I was spared and he only hit my garment. He didn't hit me, as badly as he wanted to. But so his son, Mendy Goldstein, who led or continued with the prayers, obviously everyone was trying to process, and it was just, it was very difficult to say the least. People were crying. It was very emotional. It was, especially for the women who were much closer to Lori. It was obviously very hard for them, and it wasn't an easy experience to say the least. But we were all unified. We had all been through a miracle. We all had recognized that, and we had all been united because of that moment, and we'll be united for that for the rest of our lives.
Now, the timing of when it happened in Chamisha. Yizkor was supposed to be scheduled a little while, so I would assume there are probably people who came just for Yizkor services that hadn't gotten to the synagogue yet, right?
That's absolutely correct. I remember when I was in the bushes, I noticed a vehicle driving into the area where the Chabad entrance was, and it was a family that had just arrived. They drove in, I think they drove in after, no, I think they drove in before, actually, the car had sped away. So they had just driven in, and they were a family, an Israeli family, I believe, who had just arrived and had just, missed this whole experience, thank God. I know also, you think about seconds. You're literally talking about seconds here, the difference between life and death. Rabbi Goldstein, his other children who were coming from their home, they actually had just turned the corner, his daughter and son, I was told, and they actually saw the gunman get out of his car and walk into the shul and start shooting, and they obviously fled back to their home to get their mother. So you're talking about seconds that if a few seconds later, they could have been walking right there, been a target for him, and thank God they weren't. So everything is, I guess was precise in how it was supposed to be from above, and, it's obviously heartbreaking to think that Lori was the one who was killed, and for all of us and for her family, and but for some way somehow that's what it was meant to be, and we can't really make sense of all of that.
Right. Here people are coming to memorialize the dead, and there's a shooting right around the time of Yizkor. It's chilling. I know you spoke a little bit about Lori Kay. Can you perhaps give us a little bit more insight, because she seemed like a very remarkable woman?
Yeah, a lot of the insight I've gained actually is from the people in the community, because I was a visitor to the community. I don't know her too well. I had met her husband, who was a Kohen, and he seemed, to be a good person, just from the few interactions I had with him. But what I've heard about Lori was that she really cared about everyone, and she went above and beyond to be there for everyone. And she was a pillar of that synagogue, of being able to get the loan for the construction loan, I was told, for that synagogue, and she loved that synagogue. She loved that community, and she died Kish Hashem. She gave up her life for everyone in that synagogue. She saved everyone.
Now,
no doubt.
Perhaps you tell us what she saved the rabbi, and she gave her life for the rabbi. What exactly happened? Just share with our audience that may not be familiar with it.
So I've seen more recently. The rabbi did not. When the rabbi said that, he didn't mean that she actually jumped in front of him physically, but that she took the brunt of the shots. She received 4 shots, as far as I was told. And he only shot about 8 to 10 until his gun jammed. So, but the rabbi the way that I understood what the rabbi was saying was that because she was there in the entranceway when he walked in and he shot her, and that was the first sound that we heard. The first gunshot was him shooting Lori, and that alerted obviously everyone in the building that there was an active shooter. And then at that moment, he then turned to his left, I believe, to start shooting at the rabbi. He then put his gun towards the rabbi, and then he started trying to shoot him. And then I think he went back to shooting Lori again. So, her being there prevented the shooter from coming into the synagogue. And that's where obviously the rest of the congregants, about 50 of us, would have been. And, it's just heartbreaking to think about what she went through and what her family went through and are going through. And again, I only send an infinite amount of blessings from Hashem to her family, to her daughter, to her husband, to the rest of her family, of the comfort and real consolation with everything that's gone on, and we should have the Mashiach, that we should all be reunited with her and all of our loved ones.
Amen.
I want to mention that my grandparents actually survived the Holocaust. They were in Auschwitz, and it was surreal to think, as you're calling me a survivor now, that when I think of survivors, I think of my grandparents, Aleichem Shalom, and my father and my uncle are the direct descendants of them. So just to think 70 plus years later, we're still being hunted down or being attacked because we're Jewish in our family, and we lost a lot of family members in the Shoah. So all these different ideas kind of patched together, to the story at least that I'm trying to live with now going forward, and try to take this as an opportunity to
you're sharing that
be a better
with me, and I
person.
appreciate that. Tell us about you and your family, because even though you're not a Chabadnik from birth, right, you were relatively new to Lubavitch.
That's correct, yes. I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I went to public school, my whole life. And it's actually interesting that one of the strong messages that Rabbi Goldstein is sharing, is about having a moment of silence in the public schools, which was one of the big teachings that the Lubavitch Rebbe really emphasized after Rabbi Reagan was shot. And I think back in my experiences in public school, the Pledge of Allegiance, I think it was, in the moments, in the beginning of school, and I think it makes sense, just looking back, because those were those are the early moments of your day as a child, and to have the time to really reflect on who you are, and what that you're accountable for your actions, and that we should respect one another.
But
and
you weren't religious. You weren't religious when you were in public school. So
I was not. So I was in public school. I was not. I went to University of Miami, and I got a degree there. And
so how do you
get
connected to Yiddishkeit, to Judaism?
Through University of Miami, the Hillel there and the Chabad there, they connected me when I went and studied abroad in Israel, and in Carmiel, Israel. So there I was open to the idea a little bit by little bit, and started learning, and especially Chabad Hasidus really spoke to me. And it was a journey. For sure, it's been a journey. I went and learned in Israel after I graduated. I went to Mayanot Institute for Jewish Studies for 4 years, and then I went and did smicha. I got my rabbinical ordination in Pretoria, South Africa, and it's definitely been a journey. And to think, for myself, I wasn't keeping Shabbos so long ago, and here I am keeping Shabbos. And as I said before, I really believe Shabbos saved us, and stay positive with everything.
Thank God that you survived and everybody survived. You also brought your family back to Yiddishkeit, also your father and your mother and the other siblings?
Yeah, I think little by little everyone is growing and
in your case, it was Yidel by Yidel.
Exactly, Yidel by Yidel. And, for sure, I think, my family has become more aware of the teachings of the Torah and the significance of it, and the deeper meanings, the idea of Hashgacha Pratis, and we've spoken a lot about that. There was everything was Hashgacha Pratis, even these experiences, and to be grateful for all the miracles that happened, because there were everything was a miracle. As I said before, the fact
that the gun jam, that's the biggest miracle, and he ran away.
Yes, sir.
Here's a quick email. Hannah writes from Crown Heights. After the pogrom in Crown Heights, we're talking to 1991, people asked the Rebbe, what about guards? What kind of guards should they have? The Rebbe answered, guards who have license to carry live arms. That's what the Rebbe answered. Interesting. I think we're going to have to see, unfortunately, more shuls, more synagogues, even shtibluch are going to have more security in light of what's going on. So, unfortunately, that's the tenor of the times. I want to thank you, Rabbi Aharon Tzvi Altman, Chabad of porway survivor, for giving us, I think, an important and fascinating account, an eyewitness account of what happened just literally 1 week ago. So we appreciate you sharing with us. We hope it's only good things from here on in, and we appreciate your giving us some insight as to what happened, and continued success. You're a life coach, right? You're helping Baalei Teshuvos, people returning to Judaism. That's what you do in your regular free time.
Yeah, that's correct. So I hope that, some of this experience is also about dealing with trauma and, finding light in the darkness and staying positive and, looking to make the world a better place. You see what one person can do to bring the world to a darker place, and how each one of us And I mean every single one of us have the ability and the mission to bring the world to a brighter place, to a better place, and we all have the ability to do it, and it's up to us to choose to live up to our potential and actualize it. So I hope that's the message that we all take, to do the exact opposite of what this individual did and instead make the world a better place.
Anyway, thank you for your courage. Thank you for being with us. Continue in your holy work. Rabbi Aharon Tzvi Altman, as I mentioned, who gave us an eyewitness account. Teshua Tov.
TCN, Talkline Communications Network Radio, America's #1 Jewish program.